Welcome to Celtic State of Mind. My name's John Dykes, and today I'm once again delighted to be joined by Paul Lamb. Welcome back, Paul.
Hi, Paul. Good to be back, mate.
It's a pleasure to hear you again. We're back to speak about Matchworn jerseys. This is the Celtic Matchworn Jersey podcast, a strip down memory lane. We still believe it's the only Matchworn podcast in the world, and I got a message during the week saying, does that not tell you something, Paul? I don't care if it's entering geek territory. This is an important subject. And you've chosen another 4 Celtic Matchworn jerseys. How's the reaction been yourself? I know that as a Matchworn collector, there are collectors from other clubs that may follow each other on social media. People seem to be enjoying the podcasts.
Yeah, definitely. Still getting a lot of positive feedback every week from each episode over various social media. Personally, I've been sharing it on Instagram and getting a lot of comments on that as well. So, yeah, it's really good.
I am enjoying it. And you've got a big collection, so for as long as we have jerseys to talk about, we will certainly do that, Paul. The first one that you have pulled out the Matchworn cupboard is one that I would say is, for a number of reasons, a modern day classic. Tell us about the home jersey that we wore from 1997 to 1999.
The one I've picked is from the 97-98 season, stopping the 10, as everyone knows, mostly because of the playback. It was on TV. Last week we got a lot of praise on social media, so I decided to pick this one out. When I've got it's a long sleeve version, very fine example of that shirt.
Now, I've mentioned in previous podcasts, Paul, the long sleeve versions, particularly of the hoops, for me they've always looked better. Maybe that's because back in the 60s and 70s, other than the obvious game, like in Lisbon, it was long sleeve jerseys that all the players wore. And that was really just to suit the climate. I mean, we're playing in Scotland and the jerseys were thick and it was the long sleeves, and that was because for the best part of the season we were playing in wind and rain and cold conditions. But as we moved into the 80s, it was a choice that the players had, and the likes of Roy Aitken and Danny McGrain were always in short sleeves, whereas players like Frank McAvenny, Mark McGee, Paul McStay, I think Chris Morris liked sporting the long sleeves as well. And the long sleeve jersey, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe this is the first replica that they started to sell with the long sleeves. Would I be right in saying that? I
think you might be right there. I'm not too clear on some of the early 80s replicas. It's not really my area of expertise. But from my mind, yeah, I think this is probably the most common you would see as a long sleeve replica.
And I know that the season following the one that we're going to discuss and the jersey that you have from that season, it was exactly the same design, but there was some embroidery to commemorate the league win as well, and that was sold as a replica as well. So that was worn in the 1998-99 season. So describe the jersey to us, Paul. Tell us your likes and dislikes about this particular Celtic home shirt.
This one's got the traditional one, the 7 green hoops across it. Again, it's another one that's got a shadow detail within the green hoops, predominantly a two-tone diamond pattern with a large Celtic crest that features through the background, a white panel in the centre for the sponsor. Unusually for this era when they changed to the Umbro sponsor, probably the first time I remember a team having their manufacturer as their sponsor as well. The sponsor's logo on the shirt is smaller than it appears on a replica. And most, as you know yourself, on Matchworn shirts previous, it's the opposite way around. On the Matchworn shirts, sponsor is always larger.
That's an interesting observation from yourself, and something I hadn't noticed, Paul. A couple of the points I made about this particular jersey when I was looking through the shirts in my own notes is that it was the first time since 1979 that the home jersey had the crest in the centre. To be fair, that was actually a nod back to the team that won the league with 10 men in the 4-2 game in Billy McNeil's first season. And this jersey is very similar to that when you think about it. I mean, when you look at the collar as well, it's very similar. Now, you've mentioned the sponsor, something again that you only get from doing intense amounts of research is wee nuggets of information. And I was contacted by one of our Irish friends, Jim Greenan. So if you're listening, Jim, I hope you're doing well over in Ireland there. And he is also a keen collector of jerseys, Paul, and you probably know what I'm going to say. He's got this jersey, and he's got it with C.R. Smith as the sponsor. And that's an interesting one. So I asked him, he sent me a few pictures, I asked him, what the circumstances were behind it. And it's the same old story, like with the Bumblebee one. Celtic went from C.R. Smith to nobody, and there was a period where we didn't know who was going to be sponsoring the jerseys. Eventually Umbro stepped in and did the deal. But when that jersey was being advertised in the Shoot weekly magazine, it was modelled with the C.R. Smith on it. So somehow Jim's managed to get his hands on the C.R. Smith version, which must be up there as one of the most rare Celtic jerseys, because there wouldn't be many of them manufactured.
No, definitely not. So to believe it'd be a kind of prototype mocked up for promotional purposes, as you say. Very rare, probably only a couple of them, if that, around. I've seen Jim's pictures of it. He shared them with me himself, and yeah, it's a very nice shirt.
It is, and it's just unfortunate I didn't have the time, and it was difficult as well because of where Jim is to actually get that photograph for the book, just as a wee insert on the main jersey page. I always look at this one, Paul, and again, this is maybe because my head was full of Britpop around about this time as well, but I think it kind of fitted the fashion trends of that time. We were going back to a time where people were wearing a lot of kind of baggy clothes again, like going back to the kind of, I'm not saying the flares, but certainly the jerseys and all that were quite baggy. And I remember that Liam Gallagher stepped out at Main Road and he was wearing the Umbro training kit, and it had the big white Umbro on the front, very much like, almost the same size as where the Umbro appears on the Celtic jersey. So I always look at that jersey and think it's very much of its time, the whole Britpop era with the kind of baggy gear and all that. And when you see the likes of Simon Donnelly and Jackie McNamara wearing it, the jerseys were always massive, very baggy. What player do you think of when you see this jersey?
This one, specifically the one I've got, I'm quite fortunate. And the 97-98 season, the club were still 1-11 team sheet. Yeah. So you would have your regular players who'd maintain their kind of starting position in numbers, but a lot of them would rotate. Obviously, the following season, they went to squad numbers with the names appearing on the shirts. And the one I've got here is actually a number 15, which would have been a substitute shirt, but it's a number with a bit of history behind it. I think most Celtic fans recognise that number from the day they stopped to 10. Certain Mr. Harold Bratback coming on as a substitute and scoring the second goal.
Are you able to confirm that is the jersey?
It's not the jersey he wore. When I acquired the shirt, I was told at the time it was Matchworn, but again, 5 minutes of research, I never had any pictures of the shirt before I received it, but having the shirt within 5 minutes, I could tell straight away that it wasn't the one he wore that day, down to the sleeve patches on the arms, the SFL sleeve patches, the gold and blue patch, and it's all down to the position of it on the sleeve. The one I've got, it spans across a green hoop and into the two white hoops either side of it. And when you look at the photographs of Harold celebrating the goal, the shirt he's wearing, the sleeve patch, is in a different position. So as he come on as a substitute with 18 minutes to go or something like that, he only wore the one shirt, so he wouldn't have swapped. So this would have been his spare shirt that day, but obviously never wore it. And again, as I said, when they changed to squad numbers and names the following season, this would have been the last game that these would have featured in.
It's interesting how important the sleeve patches and the position of the sleeve patches become for a subject such as this, Paul. But the other thing I would throw in there is that another friend of A Celtic State of Mind, a good friend, is Jim Orr, who wrote the Brent Like Bratback play, which has been very successful over the last few years, and in its latest showing he managed to get Harold Bratback to agree to do a short video, and the video was of Harold wearing the jersey that he wore that day. and he turns round. I don't know if you've seen it, but have a look on Twitter. He turns round and it's on the big screen when Bend It Like Bratback is on, and it shows that he's wearing the number 15 and he points to the number, you know. So there you go. The jersey is still with Harold, the one that he wore.
Yeah, certainly if it was me who'd scored that goal that day, I certainly would never let a shot like that go.
Now, you've sent me an image of jersey number 2, Paul. This is an away jersey, and I think we've mentioned previously that I'm very keen on the black jerseys. I think Celtic have always done pretty well. The one I'm a bit dubious about, and we'll cover it at some stage, was the one with the kind of, you know, the crisscross black and white stripes, and then there was a big green band across it. Was worn in the Mike Galloway benefit game for one of the Celtic sides. Not as keen on that one, but the jersey, the away jersey for the 2003-2004 season under Martin O'Neill, describe that jersey to us, Paul.
To my mind, it's a classic black away strip with gold accents on it, piping round the collar and along the sleeve, and denoting the V-neck pattern below the collar as well, along with the gold crest and star on it, as well as a Umbro double diamond.
Paul, there's a few things about this jersey I'm going to chip in with here. Firstly, and again, I've just got to admit it, I could quite easily say, I love this from day one. I wasn't a big fan of this at the time, but when I started doing the research for the book and I was looking at it, I thought, wow, that was a classy looking, particularly the jersey, but the whole lot. So I was looking at the advertising campaign that Umbro ran in the Celtic View and the Celtic programme, etc. In fact, they gave away a big poster in the Celtic View. Neil Lennon, Chris Sutton, Stan Petrov, and the tagline was Black Magic. And that was the advert that said it conjured up a fantastic new design. And at the time I remember thinking, nah, I just didn't get that. But looking back, I really do appreciate it now. I think it's a brilliant design. And one of the ones, again, that if you can get it with the long sleeves, it's stunning. Now, the other thing I would say regarding this is you mentioned the gold star. So we had the Seville-style home jersey, Paul, that when it reverted to the Carling sponsor, we wore that from 2003 to 2004, and that didn't have the Lisbon star on it. So this Black Magic strip is released in 2003, and it did have the Lisbon star. So this is actually the first Celtic kit that had the star on it. So again, historically, that is relevant in itself. We looked at the jersey that we wore to stop the 10. Bratback, you think of Bratback, you also think of Larsson, because obviously Henrik Larsson was introducing himself to the Celtic fans with the dreadlocks wearing that jersey. And I do remember, even when he signed, Paul, you know, and he turns up at Celtic Park for the photo shoot, and it wasn't number 7 he was wearing that day, it was probably just a random jersey they gave him. And I do always think of Larsson when I look at that particular jersey. But in relation to this black kit, I also think of Henrik Larsson, because I think he was becoming very prolific by this stage of his Celtic career. Can you tell us about the jersey specifically that you have and who wore it?
This one specifically, I'm lucky I've got a couple of versions of this. I've got a long sleeve version prepared for Chris Sutton, but this short sleeve one I've got was Matchworn by Henrik Larsson, number 7, and it's from an early season game away to Partick Thistle at Firhill.
The jersey that you brought along for one of the photo shoots for the book is the Henrik Larsson one, if I remember correctly. And I mean, as I say, Larsson was becoming so prolific. I think the very first time we wore this jersey was in Europe in the first leg of the Champions League qualifier, and Larsson scored that night as well. So yes, Henrik Larsson, brilliant to have a Larsson match-worn jerseys, and nothing you can do to extract the sweat from it. Maybe we can clone somebody with the DNA, you know?
It's a wee bit beyond my capabilities.
You never know, Paul, you never know. We've seen match-worn jerseys with worse than sweat on them as well, haven't we? And moving on to the match-worn jersey number 3, it's another home jersey. And we wore this one from 2008 to 2010. Remind the listeners of what this jersey looked like.
This is one of the more plain efforts from Nike, just a basic green and white hoops, not a lot of detail in it at all, really. A green V-neck collar with a gold piping round 3/4 of it, gold Nike swoosh on the chest with a traditional Celtic badge and an embroidered gold star above the badge.
I think looking back, this was Nike's third home jersey, and they kind of pushed the boundaries a wee bit with this one, Paul, because they did, as you say, they introduced what I always describe as canary yellow. I think it's meant to denote gold, green, white and gold, but there was flashes of canary yellow in the collar, and they also used the yellow for the Nike swoosh, as you say, and for the star. And then you had the trims around the shorts and then also on the socks. What's your thoughts on that introduction? Because really it's an introduction of a third colour into the green and white hoops. Do you think it works?
I think it works just plainly because of the way they've used it. It's minimal. It's an accent. It's not too in your face. You know, you've got your traditional green and white hoops, very unadorned, and just a hint of a third colour, as you say, just in the right place, I think.
Again, when you look at this, it also reminds me of the away kit that accompanied this particular jersey, and that was one of the best, you know, and we will speak about that as well, you know, the yellow one that Nike produced that season, which was, for me, it was one of the classic away kits. This was at a time where I think Nike were really producing fantastic, well-designed kits for Celtic, and I remember the advertising campaign, and it's the usual, you know, choreographed photo shoot, like they're gladiators going into battle, and it was Jan Vennegoor of Hesselink, Scott McDonald, Steve McManus, Andreas Hinkle and Nakamura, all lined up for that photo shoot. So there's some names. I think out of all of those, the guy I remember most wearing this jersey was probably Scott McDonald. And then in the inside collar, there was some nice details as well, because there was a quote from Willie Maley: "It's not the creed nor nationality that counts, it's the man himself." So they were starting to add some nice details, historical details into the jerseys as well. I mean, when you look at this particular jersey, Paul, who do you think of, or what occasions do you think of Celtic wearing them?
The particular one I've got is we're using today as a European shirt from the Champions League, and it certainly brings back memories of good European campaigns, good European nights at Parkhead, and some really great players, as you mentioned, Vennegoor, Hesselink, McDonald.
It's another one, you look at it and you remember the managers that we had at the time, and I think at that point we were coming to the end of Gordon Strachan's era at Celtic Park, and then Tony Mowbray comes in. It's bizarre actually to think back that, you know, we weren't getting new kits every single season back then. I mean, this was one that we wore for a couple of years. I think those days are gone, Paul. We are getting 3 kits every single season, no matter what. So we're only going back 10 years ago, you know, we were still wearing this in 2010, but the times have changed so much for the jersey, and it's really just a process of extracting as much money as possible. I think when I was doing my research for this, Paul, one of Celtic's first jerseys that was available as a replica kit was the biggest selling kit in the whole of Britain, and there was a league table, and Celtic were outselling Arsenal, Manchester United, Liverpool, all the big English clubs. The green and white hoops were outselling the whole lot of them. And it's always maintained that allure and that appeal worldwide. You know, it sells massive amounts. But obviously, in order to ensure that they're getting the sales every single year, there is a whole range of kits 3 times every single year. And that's difficult, I think, for a Celtic supporting family, particularly if the kids are getting the new jerseys every single year. It used to be that Celtic could wear a jersey for quite a few seasons, but now it's every single year. What's your feelings on that, Paul? I know you love new jerseys coming out, and then it's adding to your search and your quest. It's obviously more expensive for you as well.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, I remember my younger days used to buy all the replicas when they came out, and I still have them all. And I actually stopped buying replicas in 2005 when the first Nike kits were launched, because of the marketing style that Nike did, where you maybe had a home shirt for 2 seasons, but every year you would have one of your kits change, whether it's home or away, and it's just progressed to the point where the last 5 years with New Balance we've had 3 kits every year. It's a lot of money for the average person to fork out, and as you say, when kids become involved, you know, you're buying 2 and 3 sets of every kit for the kids because they all want them. It all adds up.
It definitely does, Paul, and I think, you know, as a club, Celtic obviously are massive when it comes to merchandise sales. You know, that's a massive part of the income, but there does come a point where even if it was 2 kits every season, then, you know, I still think that's quite a lot, but it's 3 every single year, and the frustration is the third kit is either very rarely used or, as we've seen this season, never used. I mean, that silver and pink monstrosity, right, because I called the zigzag one an abomination, so I'm going to call this one a monstrosity. We've never worn it, and we never will wear it. And we've already discussed that. Historically, it's the only jersey that Celtic have had that they've never worn in a match. So it's quite clear that we don't need a third kit. It's just a marketing and merchandising way of squeezing more money out of the Celtic fans. So it's not something I particularly agree with. And it's been difficult, actually, when doing a book which has been written over the period of 5 years, because every single year you're having to find another 2 or 3 match-worn jerseys as well, Paul. You know, every single summer another set of kits comes in, and then you're looking to get them photographed, and then, you know, so it is difficult. And I think that they've really pushed it as far as they can when it comes to jerseys. And on a personal level, I would much prefer the third kit to be something that's more long-standing. I've already suggested that we should have a blackout kit that we wear on such occasions where it's necessary and relevant and appropriate. For example, if we're going to remember someone who's passed away, and I think that would be a good way of having a third kit that doesn't get changed every season. I mean, we'll never go back. It's going to remain the same now forevermore, because they've pushed the boundaries as far as they can, and they're not going to go back to 2 jerseys. But it is a frustration. So who wore the jersey that we've just discussed here with the yellow flashes, Paul?
The shirt I've got here is a long sleeve European spec player shirt. And it was match worn by Scott McDonald in a home Champions League game against Manchester United in November 2008. Interestingly, it's one of the early times where there's 3/4 of the back of the shirt is an integrated white panel, so that the player's name and number is clearly visible on the back, rather than a panel being attached to the shirt. Interestingly as well, the name on the back of it appears in lowercase lettering rather than capitals, which is a more traditional. It's traditional number 7 with the UEFA Champions League logo at the bottom of the number, and the Champions League star ball on the right sleeve of the shirt. At this period, nowadays, they have the Respect logo patch on the opposite sleeve in European games, whether it be Europa League or Champions League. At this period, it was still just the Champions League star ball that appeared on the shirt.
The thing is, you mentioned McDonald. He's one of the players I think of when I look at that kit. And the final jersey, it's so interesting, the final jersey, because I felt it was a real missed opportunity by Nike. And what I liked about some of the designs that they had done up until this stage, Paul, was they were dipping into the past, and they were looking for inspiration from some of the jerseys we had worn in the past. And the ones that come to mind is the black and green striped jersey, vertical stripes. You know, it looked so much better second time round. You know, the one that Nakamura scored the free kick and swung around his head. But obviously we'd worn a very similar design back in the 70s. We then wore the away jersey that we've mentioned there, the canary jersey with the green shorts, yellow socks, and that was kind of harking back to the centenary year. It looked very similar in design, although the collar was different. And Nike had already looked back and done the Bumblebee jersey as well back in 2009. So when I heard that they were coming away with a lime green effort, you know, my mind went right back to 1986 in Love Street, Paul. And I thought this was going to be a modern day classic. On a personal level, the 2010-11 away jersey, the lime green effort, I don't think it hit the mark. And I'll explain why in a few moments. What was your thoughts on this particular away jersey from Nike?
I'd say pretty much what you've just said there is the thought of a lime green kit. Being a youngster growing up in the 80s, and as you say, you remember the Love Street 86 so vividly. Some iconic images as a Celtic fan, and to have something similar again would have been fantastic, but for whatever reason they seem to have got the colour wrong.
They did get it wrong. I mean, I'm looking at it just now, Paul, and I think there's a few things, and I'm just an observer like yourself. I'm not a designer, but I mean, aesthetically it just doesn't look right, and I think the reason for that is you've got the lime green, and that's fine, but then you've got the kind of gold star and Nike swoosh, and then you've got a white and black sponsor, and then you've got black shorts and a black collar. And I just think there's too many colours for that to work there. When you look back at the Love Street 86 jersey, I think the simplicity of it was its real beauty. I mean, obviously the V-neck was quite thick, and it was unlikely Nike were going to go back to that, because it's not something that's replicated or has been replicated since the 1980s. However, the shorts and the collar were just a darker green, you know, and it worked. It worked so well on the Love Street kit. So you look at that, lime green top, dark green shorts, and dark green socks as well. And it worked an absolute treat, but I think Nike just got it wrong. And the round collar as well, being black, it just didn't seem to work, you know. We then had the shading on the body on the front of the shirt, and it probably would have looked better if it was just plain lime green. You know, sometimes, I've mentioned this before, sometimes they throw in all these details that are unnecessary. Then with the black shorts, Sometimes we wore the lime green shorts, and in the Tenants, a big red tee. So there's another colour thrown into the palette, and it just did not work. I mean, if you were looking at that as a design, it's quite clear that just a few wee tweaks would have made it so much better, Paul.
Yeah, and as you say, with the shading design in the background of the shirt, it's been two-toned to make it almost look like hoops on the shirt, but also the detail doesn't carry on to the sleeves, so it doesn't seem to flow as a design. The
one thing about the shading as well, Paul, is that it's 88, so we know it's basically telling us that Celtic were formed in 1888, right? And in fact, looking at it, does it say 1888 or just 88?
I think it's 1888.
1888, and
because of the way it's printed, it's confusing on the eye.
It is a bit confusing. But I remember, we're going to speak about Paddy McCourt in a moment, and one of Paddy's most famous goals, not wearing this particular kit, was against St. Pauli, where he went on his usual mazy run, scored a brilliant goal, and that was over in Germany for their centenary match. Now, I got friendly with a couple of St. Pauli fans when I went over. I was writing a book on the Celtic St. Pauli friendship. I got friendly with a couple of the St. Pauli fans. They came over to Glasgow, took them to the games, etc. And then I took them into the superstore where they refused to buy any kit, and I was quite surprised at that. And the reason that they refused was because just about everything they saw had either HH or 88 on it. That can denote neo-Nazi sensibilities. 88 and HH is Heil Hitler, right? And 8 is obviously the 8th letter of the alphabet's H. So you were basically saying to all your German fans and the friends that you had over in St. Pauli, this is our range of merchandise, although it may offend you, because neo-Nazis over in Germany still sign their name with HH after it. And it doesn't mean hail, hail, right? So these are the small details that I think you can really shoot yourself in the foot if you're not careful. And again, it just was not required in the shading of that jersey. It just overcomplicated it even more, didn't it? And I still believe we could resurrect the lime green Love Street 86 jersey in a much better way. And you never know. Perhaps Adidas have already got it in their sights.
Yeah, definitely. Here's hoping to do it justice would be really good. It'd have to be a classic design. As you said, nothing over too complicated. And I think Adidas have got a good track record in that area, so it's going to be really interesting to see what comes out.
It is. I mean, I do remember I mentioned there about the V-neck collars, the big chunky V-neck collars, and how we last saw them in the 80s. Just through discussing Adidas there, I've thought back to the kind of mid-90s when Liverpool, the Liverpool home jersey had a big thick V-neck, and that was an Adidas one as well. That was a jersey that the likes of Stan Collymore and Jamie Redknapp were wearing. So you never know. It looked really good back in the 90s. It looked great in the 80s. A big V-neck collar, I think, on an away lime green jersey may well go down a storm. So there's a lot more to talk about on this particular jersey though, Paul. So tell us the game it was played in and the embroidery that was added for that particular game.
The shirt I've got was from an away game at Love Street against St Mirren in November 2010, and it was the third and final time that the Remembrance Poppy featured on a Celtic shirt.
Celtic, like all Scottish and English top flight clubs, agreed to wear an embroidered poppy on the centre of their jersey for, as you say, the Remembrance Sunday, Paul. And Celtic fans, and in my opinion, and it is my opinion, were quite right to protest against that. And the way that the Celtic fans protested against it was by unfurling a banner and saying, "Your deeds would shame all the devils in hell, no bloodstained poppy on our hoops." Now, the Green Brigade get flack, Paul. They've had flack over a number of years about some of their decisions and some of the fines that they've brought to the club. And the Green Brigade get mentioned in dispatches on a Celtic State of Mind from time to time because they're so relevant that you will discuss them. 100% the Green Brigade were correct to oppose the poppy on the jersey. When you think about some of the atrocities of the British Army, in particular during the conflict in Ireland, specifically Bloody Sunday, as well as the British Armed Forces casualties in Iraq and Afghanistan, which were mentioned in the Green Brigade statement at the time, I think the fans were right to protest, and I think the club were right thereafter never to wear that poppy on the jersey again. That's my opinion. People may agree or disagree, but I think a wide section of the Celtic fan base would tend to agree with that, Paul.
From my own point of view of this particular shirt, I've had a bit of stick whenever I've posted pictures of this shirt on social media, rightly or wrongly. For me personally, it's a collectible shirt. It's a one-off. It's something different. That's the only way I view it.
Exactly, and as a collector, Paul, it's a missing part of the jigsaw for you. You're not buying it or seeking it out because you agree with a Poppy being on a Celtic jersey. You're doing it because it's a missing part of your historical collection. So you shouldn't certainly get stick for it. Celtic have not worn the Poppy in their jerseys now for 10 years. I think that was the right decision. James McLean gets stick for it. He gets death threats for refusing to wear the Poppy. And Celtic will always get bad press for not wearing it as well, Paul, but I think it's the right decision. When you look at the history of our club, the Irish heritage, the Irish roots, then it's only right that we should remember other aspects of history, and that's what we now do. And I think in the future, you'll be able to speak about some jerseys with the Famine Memorial logo on them, and we can talk about the relevance of that as well. But no, thanks for sharing that jersey, because it is part of history. We can't airbrush out the fact that Celtic wore the Poppy for 3 years consecutively on Remembrance Sunday. So it's part of our history. We need to talk about it, and thanks for bringing that up. Who in particular, who wore that jersey that day?
The one I've got is Matchworn by Paddy McCourt that day, and as people remember the game, he set up a very late winner for Gary Hooper that day in the 89th minute, if I remember rightly. And it was one of those occasions, as you mentioned when you were talking about the strip, where they wore the matching green shorts rather than the black shorts.
Probably looked better as well with the green ones, Paul. What do you reckon?
I think it did.
It certainly did. But again, it's difficult for the players, and, you know, big shout out to James McLean. The guy's got balls. He stood up. He refused to wear it. He knew what was coming in terms of the backlash, and he's taken it on the chin every single year. So fair play to James McLean. It's difficult for professional footballers when your employer is asking you to wear a certain jersey. I remember going back, might be one of the things that you imagine. I remember Near Beaton coming on as a sub in one of his early appearances for Celtic, and he was trying to hide the sponsor because it was an alcohol logo. Would I be right in saying that? Is that my imagination? Somebody that's listening in might be able to tell me otherwise, I don't know. But it's difficult for players, Paul, because you and I love the jersey, you collect them, you spend vast sums of money to get missing items for your collection. But in many ways, I speak to players and it's just their uniform. It's like their uniform that they wear at work, you know? Especially
nowadays, because the kits are in abundance, especially for players, you know, they maybe get 2 or 3 sets sitting there, so they wear it, and more often than not, players are giving their shirts away at the end of games, whereas 20, 30 years ago, they might have had a handful of kits to last them the whole season, you know, so they meant more back then.
No, you're right, and particularly when you couldn't buy them as replicas, the only time you got a chance to pull on the hoops is if you were wearing it for real, you know? Now, Paul, we have just completed another episode of the podcast that's been called Watching the Snooker on a Black and White Telly. We will continue to provide our listeners with 4 Matchworn jerseys every single week. It's been an absolute pleasure once again, Paul, and I'll catch up with you next week, sir.
Cheers, Paul. Good to speak to you again.